السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه، والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد, inshallah we will carry on where we left off in our Fiqh of Tahara series, and as a recap we finished discussing At-Tayammum, which is the dry ablution, the dry Tahara, and then we went over the ahkam of al-wudu in somewhat of a quicker pace, and we're just about done. Today we will touch on some important ahkam that is tied to wudu as well, inshallah. And what I want to touch on today is the masih, or wiping over of footwear, socks or sandals or shoes, as well as wiping over al-jabira, or what is like a cast or a bandage or something similar. So in brief or quickly regarding the ahkam, footwear may be wiped over when it comes to making minor tahara. Okay, when it comes to making al-wudu, it is permissible to wipe over the footwear in the minor tahara, when you're in a state of minor ritual impurity. However, wiping over the bandages, or jabira in Arabic, bandage or a cast or something similar, it can be done in a state of minor or major impurity. So whether it's done in wudu or ghusl, both of them are permissible depending on the situation or the case at hand. Other general ahkam referring to wiping over the footwear is the muqim, or the one who is a resident, may wipe over his footwear for how long? The muqim can wipe over his footwear for 1 day. 1 day and 1 night, 24 hours. And the musafir, or the person who is a traveler, can wipe over for 3 days and nights. Okay? So there is many rulings that are associated to wiping over the socks. Inshallah, we'll try to cover as much as we can, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Perhaps we won't go into extreme detail in all of the branches of it, but we'll take, inshallah, as much as we can, bi'idhnillah. So, wiping over the khuf, and khuf is used to refer to footwear here, so either socks or shoes or sandals or the like. Okay, this is an essential component to tahara, to minor tahara. Okay, and wiping over the khuf, this mas'ala that we have here, even though it is a dars of fiqh, and the fiqh mas'ala of wiping over the khuf is mentioned in ahkam al-tahara wa ahkam al-salat and the likes. However, there is amongst the ulama, even from the earlier generations, that actually mentioned wiping over the khuf in the books of Aqidah. Okay, they mentioned wiping over the khuf in the books of Aqidah, and amongst the earliest ones who actually mentioned it in that context was Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah ta'ala. And even Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, what can be translated to, that whoever does not wipe over the khuf, okay, whoever does not wipe over the khuf or permit wiping over the khuf, then accuse him regarding the deen. Okay, this is a very big statement. We'll come to know why in a minute here, okay? Is wiping over the khuf a matter of aqidah? Meaning a matter of belief, a foundational belief? We'll come to understand that in a moment here. So, the permissibility of doing so, why is it mentioned in books of Aqidah? Because the permissibility of wiping over the khuf is a hallmark, or it is a very key or essential sign or alama of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Okay? Some might think that this is strange because many of the ahkam that we've covered so far, and many other ahkam in regards to salah, tahara, and the likes, have khilaf on them. There's many issues that have khilaf, meaning that the scholars disputed. Okay? However, these disputes obviously in fiqh masail, they do not make somebody leave the fold of Ahl Sunnah or leave the fold of Islam. However, when it comes to the validity of masih ala al-khuffayn, or wiping over the footwear, over the socks, like I said, we have many scholars that mentioned it in books of Aqidah, such as Sufyan al-Thawri, al-Barbahari, Tahawi, and others. Okay? And why they mentioned it in books of Aqidah was in difference to the firq al-dalla, or the misguided sects of Ahl Bid'ah, which would deny or say it is not permissible to wipe over the khuf. They used to deny al-masih ala al-khuffayn. And why is that problematic and a sign of Ahl Bid'ah? Because when they do so, they actually are denying dozens, they actually are denying dozens of narrations of ahadith that are authentic, as well as denying the implied meaning of an ayah in the Quran as well. Okay? So, does anybody have an idea of some of the firq al-dalla that prohibit wiping over the socks? Al-Khawarij, tamam, and Al-Rawafid. Okay, the Khawarij wal Rawafid, there are two sects of Islam that are misguided. Okay, that would, it became a trademark or symbol of theirs that they do not wipe over, or they deny the mas'al al-khuffayn. So the Sunni can be distinguished in this mas'ala from Ahl Bid'ah in this regard. He can be distinguished from the Rafidi wal Khariji in this mas'ala here. And Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he says, وَالْيَهُودُ لَا يَرَوْنَ الْمَسِحَ عَلَى الْخُفَّيْنِ وَكَذَلِكَ الرَّافِضَةِ. Even Shaykh al-Islam, he says that the Jews, they do not view the validity of wiping over the khuffayn, and neither do al-Rawafid. There are some narrations that are attributed to the Sahaba which deny the permissibility of wiping over the khuffayn, over the footwear. However, they are not authentic. There are a few that are attributed to Sahaba that may have some authenticity to them. However, those particular Sahaba, they actually recanted or they went back on their views, so they're irrelevant. So even what has been narrated in the regard of Sahaba that viewed the impermissibility of doing so, they actually recanted their view, so that means that their view is no longer upheld by them to begin with. And Ahl Sunnah, the ulama of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they do not disagree in the mas'ala of wiping over al-khuf. So as we know in the ayah of wudu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ وَإِنْ كُنْتُمْ جُنُبًا فَاطَّهَّرُوا إلى آخر الآية. So, like we mentioned last time, when it comes to the mention of washing the feet in the verse here in Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse number 6, we talked about last time how there's a farq bil-qira'at. There's a difference in the modes of recitation in this word, the way that it's pronounced. Okay, so I'm just going to go just to recap a little bit so we can benefit here. So in one of the qira'at, the one that is the one that we recite in predominantly in Hafs and Asim, it's mentioned, it's mansoob, so it's mentioned in nasb. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says arjulakum, which is grammatically tied to the first mas'ala mentioned, which is washing the faces, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says wujuhakum, see that it's mansoob, there's a fatha there, wujuhakum, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says afterwards arjulakum as well, which goes back to, grammatically, it implies the same ruling which was initially mentioned, which is washing of the face. So since the face is washed, then the feet are washed as well. However, There is in another qira'ah, it's majroor, which means that there's a kasra there on the lam instead of a fatha as we see in the first qira'ah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, arjulikum, which goes back to what's also majroor prior to it, which is wamsahu bi ru'usikum, then in this riwayah, wa arjulikum ila al-ka'bayn. So that would be in the second riwayah here, that wiping over the feet or the feet or the legs, the hukm of it is grammatically tied to what's prior to it, which is also majroor, which is wiping over the head. So meaning that the feet would be wiped. So there is ulama that said that this is the qira'ah. They say, some of the ulama, they say this qira'ah is mansukh, it is abrogated, the hukm of it. Other ulama, they reconcile between all of the dalil by saying that no, this qira'ah is not mansukh, it's not abrogated. However, it is the qira'ah which is the Quranic dalil, the Quranic proof, which supports wiping over al-khuf. And we have one of the famous hadith fil bab. We have a hadith عن عروة بن المغيرة عن أبيه قال كنت مع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في سفر فأهويت لأنزع خفيه فقال أدعوهما دعهما استغفر الله دعهما فإني أدخلتهما طاهرتين فمسح عليهما. So Al-Mughira, Urwa ibn al-Mughira narrates from his father Al-Mughira that my father said, once I was in the company of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam on a journey, and then when it came time for wudu, I went to go take off his khuf. And subhanAllah, you see just a side benefit here is you see how keen the Sahaba were with their good treatment of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. They would even be keen on assisting him in his wudu, even in taking off his socks alayhi salatu salam. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he ordered the Sahabi Mughira to leave them on, to leave the socks on his feet, as he says alayhi salam, as he had put them on while they were pure or after performing ablution. So then he, in his wudu, wiped over his khuf. Okay, and this hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim. And there is lots of dalil, lots of evidences regarding wiping over the khuf for both the residents and the travelers. So much so that many ulama, such as Ibn al-Mubarak, Ibn al-Mundhir, Ibn Abd al-Barr, al-Nawawi, Ibn Qudama, and others, they narrated al-ijma' of masih al-khuffayn. Al-ijma', they narrated a consensus on the permissibility of wiping over the socks. So much so, Imam Ahmad said, وقال ليس في نفسي من المسح شيء فيه 40 حديثا عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. Imam Ahmad, he says that there is nothing in my nafs that is against wiping over the socks, as there's 40 ahadith on the authority of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in this regard. وقال الحسن البصري رحمه الله أدركت 70 بدريا من الصحابة كلهم كانوا يرون المسح على الخفين. I met 70 of the Sahaba who attended Badr, and all of them used to view the permissibility of wiping over the khuf. So we're going to get into some masail here. When it comes to wiping, what is preferable in wudu? Wiping or washing? What do you think is more preferable? Any more rewarding, more priority for the Muslim to be keen on doing? Washing? The first opinion is removing the khuf and washing the feet is preferable. And this is held by the majority of the ulama. Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi'i, rahimahumullah. And why they say it's preferable is because washing of the foot is al-asl. It's the default. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, that washing is the default, so it is preferred, and wiping over the khuf is a rukhsa, it's an exceptional ruling. Okay? The second opinion is what is better depends on the status of the individual. Okay, this is held by Hanabila, from them obviously Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, and Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah. Okay, and why they said this, or why they gave this exception, they said that if the foot is bare, then it's better to wash. Okay, if the foot is bare, then obviously it's better to wash, because also you're in a state where you're able to wash them depending on the person was currently in wudu or not, if they're making wudu al-wajib or not, whatever the case may be. Maybe you cannot even make masih because your feet are bare already. Okay, so if the foot is bare, then it's better to wash. However, if the foot has the khuf already on it, then it is better to wipe. And they use the example of Al-Mughira radiyallahu anhu, that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he had his khuf already on. So instead of removing them to wash his feet, as he told Mughira, that he entered his feet into those socks while they were pure, meaning while he had wudu. So he left them on and wiped over them. So when his noble feet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam were bare, he would wash them. And when they were covered, he would wipe them. Alayhi salatu wasalam. Okay, and as we mentioned previously, if a person is wearing a khuf and they have al-hadath al-akbar, major impurity, they're on janaba, okay, then they have to make ghusl. They cannot make ghusl with the khuf on. They must remove the khuf to make ghusl, okay? We're going to just quickly take al-masah al-jabira, then we're going to go back to al-masah al-khuffain because there's more masail tied to that. Al-masah al-jabira is a primitive, so al-jabira is like an early or primitive form of a cast or a bandage which would be put on somebody's body in case of injury. Okay, and in classic times it was stabilized using like sticks and bandages and whatnot. And this is comparable to a current day medical bandage or cast or medical wrapping or what have you. And al-jabira can be wiped over in the state, like I said initially, in both minor and major impurity. Okay? And the difference between al-jabira and why it can be wiped in major impurity is quite clear. Okay, why can it be wiped in major impurity, the jabira, and the socks cannot? Why do you think? Because the jabira, one is muttar. Okay, somebody, they're forced to. They cannot just remove the medical wrap or cast just whenever they feel like it. No, usually it's there for a reason. The person has an injury, and it's there for the purpose of healing or curing them. Okay, as opposed to the socks, where somebody, it's just a matter of comfort and convenience. Okay? And also, the hukm of al-jabira also applies to exposed skin. Okay? That is, has some serious allergy or illness or ailment or sensitivity that can be agitated by water. So maybe the person has no jabira, but they have some type of medical condition where it's very sensitive to water, then the same hukm of al-jabira would apply to the skin. Okay, so the scholars differ in what should be done in regards to the jabira, wiping over it. So the first opinion is that one should wash whatever can be washed and wipe over whatever cannot be washed. And if he cannot wipe over the limb, meaning the jabira, he should try to cover it, okay, and wipe over the covering. Or astaghfirullah, so afwan, made a mistake. So I'll repeat. The first opinion is to wash over what can be washed and to wipe over the exposed part, what cannot be washed. Okay? Either the injury or the skin ailment or so on. And if you cannot even wipe over the exposed limb, then to cover it and to wipe over the covering. Okay? And if this is even too harmful, then there's no need to wipe at all. And if he is unable to wash the majority of the body in the ghusl, or the majority of the limbs, which must touch water in wudu, then he does tayammum. Okay? So that can be like an example of a full body cast, or something to that effect. The majority of the body cannot be touched by water for ghusl or wudu, then they would say to wash whatever you can, wipe on whatever you can according to the best of your ability. and then do tayammum. Okay, and the ones that hold this opinion are the Ahnaf and Maliki. The second, and then tayammum, it's a total form of tahara, and one cannot make tayammum for an individual limb. Okay, they say that you either perform wudu and ghusl or you perform tayammum. Okay, so that's just a side point here. So some of them, they say that you cannot perform tayammum as a juz' of the wudu. Juz', meaning part. Okay, because one part cannot be washed, you make tayammum for it. Some ulama, they have an issue with that because they say that tayammum is a complete form of tahara, just like wudu is. So either you make wudu, or you make ghusl, or you make tayammum. Okay, so some ulama, they had an issue, and they mentioned this khilaf here. Okay, the second opinion is combining washing and full tayammum. So combining washing and a full tayammum. So what the person would do in this regard, he would wash the healthy parts of the body until they reach a part of the body that cannot normally be washed. So they perform an entire tayammum, okay, in the midst of wudu, and then resume the wudu or ghusl, and there is no need to wipe over the areas which are ill, even if possible. And this is held by a Shafi'i. The third opinion, which is similar to the Shafi'i view, is combining washing and a full tayammum, but the person performs tayammum before, during, or after the wudu or ghusl. So in the first opinion of the Shafi'is, what they would say is when they come to the stage where they cannot wash properly, then they make a tayammum. So they even put the tayammum in tartib of the wudu or the ghusl. This other view, the third opinion, they say that no, you make tayammum either before, during, or after the wudu or ghusl, then you wash the healthy areas and perform an entire tayammum for the parts that cannot be washed. Okay? And this is the view of the Hanbalis, and they say to also wipe over the areas which are ill if possible. And in the end of the day, okay, this is totally an issue of ijtihad between the scholars. Okay, the asl fil bab, okay, the foundational proof in this regard is the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which He says, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Okay, fear Allah, have taqwa of Allah as much as you can. So if somebody is in the state where they have a jabira, if they wash over what they can and wipe over what you cannot, whether covered or bare, and if it is harmful, then to leave it off. Okay? And, it is better, some ulama, they say that it is better to perform tayammum as it's more cautious. And it can be done before, during, or after. And some ulama, they selected this opinion because it's the best choice. Allahu a'lam, as we said, it's an ijtihadi mas'ala. So if somebody, they have on a cast, okay, to make it a very specific example for ease, if somebody has on a cast, Wallahu a'lam, the Zahiri madhab, they have an opinion which they say, and others as well also support this opinion. They say that, as we took already beforehand here, that it's not necessary to wipe over the covering. Okay, because we do not have any clear, explicit proof that indicates to wipe over the covering of the jabira, okay? Or to wipe over the injured limb which cannot be washed normally. So, they hold the opinion that whatever you cannot wash, then it has fallen off of you. So if somebody had a cast on and they wash everything in their wudu normally except the part that's covered by the cast, they don't wash it and they carry on with the rest of their wudu, inshallah that is fine. If they want to wipe over the cast, or if it was an injured area that's not covered, if possible, that's fine as well. That's tamam, inshallah. No issues with that. It was an extra step. And if you want to be take extra precaution, al-ahwat, according to some scholars, you can also make tayammum as well. Wallahu a'lam, al-rajih, what seems to be the more correct opinion is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Fear Allah as much as you can. If the person has a cast on, then as much as they can is everything but the covered part. So that should be sufficient. If they go to wipe over, ما في إشكال inshallah, and if they want to make tayammum to be extra safe, not an issue. But inshallah, just avoiding what cannot be washed. Normally, inshallah, there should not be an issue with that. Wallahu a'lam. Excuse me. So, we said that the timing in which somebody can make masih of the khuffain for, we're going to go back to the khuffain. The jabira obviously is as long as somebody has it on, because like we said, it's not an issue of convenience and comfort, it's an issue of al-ittirar. They have a darura, it must be covered for the sake of their health. So when it comes to the wiping over al-khuffain, then we said that the resident can do so for 24 hours and the traveler for 3 days and 3 nights, 72 hours. And this is the opinion held by the overwhelming majority of the ulama, including Sahaba as well, like Umar ibn Khattab, Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiyallahu anhuma, Ibn Mas'ud, Ibn Abbas, Hudayf, Ibn Mughira, and others. And from the Tabi'een, Abu Hanifa, Al-Shafi'i, Ishaq ibn Rahway, Al-Thawri, Al-Awza'i, Imam Ahmed, Dawood al-Zahiri, Ibn Abd al-Barr al-Maliki, and Ibn Abd al-Barr, he says, rahimahullah, that most of the Tabi'un wal Fuqaha are upon this opinion. And it is more precautious in my view. That is, wiping has been established by mass narration. The scholars of Ahl Sunnah have consensus regarding it. I am sure regarding their agreement, so most of them have said that it is not appropriate for the resident to wipe beyond 5 prayers in a day and a night. That is not appropriate for the traveler to exceed 15 prayers in 3 days and 3 nights. Then the obligation upon the scholar is to establish his prayers on a certain basis, and certainty here is to wash until you arrive at what was agreed upon regarding wiping, and they did not agree exceeding 3 days for the traveler or 1 day for the resident. Okay? And I'm not going to go into too much depth and detail regarding this, as this seems to be al-qawl al-rajih and the opinion of the jamhur, the majority. Just for the sake of mentioning it, without going into the dalil though, there is a weaker opinion in this mas'ala here, and that is that there's no limit of wiping at all unless the person enters into al-janaba. Okay? So the next mas'ala here, brothers and sisters, is when does the time of masih begin? When do you start the clock? For the 24 hours for the resident or the 72 hours for the traveler? When does the time begin? If somebody woke up, for example, for argument's sake, adhan of Fajr is at 4 a.m. Okay, they make wudu right at 4 a.m. on the dot. And then afterwards, shortly after, at 4:30, they put on socks while they have wudu. And pay attention here, because one of the conditions of wiping over the khuf is, as mentioned in the narration from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that the khuf must be worn, or the feet rather must be covered. As he said, he entered his feet into the khuf, while they were pure. So one must cover his feet in the state of purification. So one must cover his feet, put on his footwear, his socks, whatever, while he is in a state of tahara, while he has made wudu from washing the feet. Very important, okay? So when does the time of masih begin in this example? At 4 a.m. when the person initially makes wudu, at 4:30 when they put on their socks. When does the time begin exactly? Anybody have any idea? Rayan? When does the time begin? Naam. When he's done wudu? Okay, any other opinions? When he puts his socks? Any other opinion? Always? So there's lots of khilaf regarding this. However, so the first opinion is it begins when a person breaks their wudu while wearing the khuf. So let's say the person went on, they broke their wudu at 5 a.m. So that would mean that they have a full 24 hours from 5 a.m. to wipe over their khuf. Okay? And that's held by many scholars, Imam Abu Hanifa, Shafi'i, Ahmed, and others. And they say that their ijtihad is that the need or the permissibility of wiping over the khuf arises when breaking the original wudu while wearing the khuffayn. So at this point, that's when the masih begins. And therefore, the timer should start there. The second opinion held by Al-Hasan al-Basri is when a person puts their khuf on in the state of wudu. Okay, so in our example, at 4:30 when he put on the khuf, then right when he put on the khuf, that's when the timer would begin. This is a very weak opinion, okay? And it does not make sense as a person can remain in wudu and remove the khuf and put them back on again and continue to do so. So, like we said, the shart or the condition, one of the shurut or the conditions of being able to wipe over the khuf is that they're worn upon tahara. So let's say somebody, they made wudu at 4 a.m. Technically speaking, they can put on socks and change their mind. They want to wear a different pair. Then put on another one and change their mind again. They want to wear a different pair. And they can keep on doing that if they wanted to for a whole hour. So when would it start exactly? It doesn't make sense, this opinion, for this reason. Okay? The third opinion, and it's a qawl al-rajih, wallahu a'lam, it's held by Imam al-Awza'i, Imam Ahmed, Ibn al-Mundhir, al-Nawawi, and Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, is that the masih begins that the first time the person makes masih, whether they broke their wudu or not. Okay, so let's say somebody, they woke up, they made wudu at 4 a.m., put on their khuf at 4:30, and then later on they went back to sleep after Fajr, for example, they woke up at Dhuhr time, 12 noon, and they make wudu at noon time. Whether or not they broke their wudu prior to, if they're making wudu while they have wudu, or if they broke their wudu when they're making wudu. So at noon time, it's the first time they make wudu and make masih. For the first time, that's when the timer begins. Okay? And this opinion is also attributed to Amir al-Mu'mineen Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu anhu. And in the hadith, or in a hadith here that we have, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sent out a military expedition. Okay, he sent out some Sahaba ala ghazu, and he commanded them to wipe over their turbans, the imama and the khuf. Okay, and Rasulullah commanded them to wipe for 3 days and 3 nights. And this suggests, because he commanded them to wipe for 3 days and 3 nights. Okay? So what they say, these scholars, they say that what's implied or what's suggested by the command of Rasulullah is that the wiping, the duration is strictly associated to the wiping. He commanded them to wipe for 3 days and 3 nights, meaning that the duration only is tied to the masih in and of itself. Okay? Not breaking the wudu, putting on socks, or any of that. Therefore, that being said, from the time of the first masih is when the timer would begin. Okay? So somebody, they woke up at Fajr time, made wudu and wore socks. Then they went their whole day. Let's say in our time, we have here Salat al-Asr, Adhan al-Asr at 6 p.m. on the dot today. So the person, they were delaying Dhuhr. They made wudu at 5:45 p.m. and they prayed Dhuhr. Even though they put on their socks 12 hours or even 13 hours prior to a Fajr time, the timer for masih would begin from that wudu, because that would be the first time they made wudu of masih at the 5:45, and they would have until 5:45 p.m. the next day. Is that clear? So the timer would begin at the timing of the first masih. Wallahu a'lam. Our next mas'ala here is, does wudu become batil or is it broken due to the time of masih ending? So let's say that somebody, they had their time of masih expires at 6 p.m. and they made wudu prior to it, and then 6 p.m. hits. Does it mean their wudu is now batil? No. Their wudu is not invalidated by the time of masih expiring. Simply, they are no longer allowed to make masih over the khuf. Okay? But their wudu is perfectly fine. Another issue here is if somebody were to make wudu by wiping over the khuf when it's permissible, and then they take off their khuf after, does that nullify their wudu? Does it nullify the wudu? No. Likewise, the time expiring for masih does not invalidate wudu, neither does taking off the footwear invalidate wudu. And we have a narration from Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu in which he actually made wudu over his sandals, na'alayn, and then after he completed his wudu, he took them off and he made salah. Okay, and this is a clear indication that Ali radiyallahu anhu understood that, and this seems to be the correct opinion, wallahu a'lam. And further, these masail I'm not going to go, I'm trying to skim over whatever I can summarize. I'm trying to do that for time's sake, but whatever inshallah has benefit in elaborating further, I will be idhnillah. So I'm just trying to, okay. So we want to now talk about what are some of the conditions of al-khuf. What makes something in and of itself a permissible type of footwear to wipe over. Okay, there's some ulama, they said that it's been narrated, there's like 25 conditions to what makes something a valid khuf that one can wipe over. One of the shuyukh, they say that, when somebody heard this, they're like, okay, you know what? We're just gonna take them off and wash our feet. 25 conditions, too much to know. Okay? But no, inshallah, the matter is easier than that, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, okay? So, what establishes a khuf? Okay? So some ulama, they say that a khuf must be something that is satir, which means that the khuf must cover the foot, okay? It can refer to one of three things, okay? One, two, or all three of three things, and that is completely covering the feet up until the ankle, which is what must be washed in wudu. It covers the foot without a hole, or it covers without being so light as to not be seen through. So, what can be understood from satir can be one of these, or one, two, or all three of these three things here, okay? So, many scholars, they hold the opinion that in order for a sock to be eligible to wipe over, it must cover the ankle. It must go up to the ankle, covering the ankle. And they say that just as the foot al-ka'bayn, to the ankle must be washed in the ayah of wudu, they say that, so unless the entire surface area of what must be washed is covered, then they cannot be wiped upon. Okay? So, Allahu A'lam, so then other scholars say it's not required to cover the entire fard area. So the Ummah of the four madhahib, or opinions of the four madhahib, say that the whole foot and the ankle must be covered. Other ulama, they say, like Imam al-Awza'i or Imam ibn Hazm rahimahumullah, they say that wiping over, or that the foot, in order for a khuf to be eligible to wipe over, it does not necessarily have to cover the entire surface of what's fard to be washed. Okay? They said that the exemption from masih came regarding any khuf, and there is no evidence to state that it must cover the entire limb, which is washed in wudu. If there was a limit, then the Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would not have neglected to tell us. What is considered a khuf can be wiped upon. Okay? So this, Allahu A'lam, seems to be like the more correct opinion, that even if it doesn't cover the entire ankle, that is fine, because we do not have any explicit dalil to say so. However, if you want to take al-ahwat, what's safer, and free yourself from the dispute, which is obviously in masail like this, it's preferred maybe to do so. Okay, it's something relatively simple. But then just only make masah over what's covering the ankles. Like I said, even if the ankles may be a little bit exposed, there is ulama like Ibn Hazm al-Awza'i that they say it's permissible. We don't have any dalil to specify. And we have a hadith that says, what the translation meaning of the hadith is, that whatever is not in the book of Allah, whatever condition is not in the book of Allah, then it's not a condition, or what can be translated as which. Meaning that in order for a condition to be valid, it must have clear dalil for it. So because there's no clear dalil to say that the entire surface area of what's fard must be washed, therefore it is not a condition. However, like I said, if you want to be on the safer side, because obviously Amr as-Salah is very important, and just only make masah over what covers the ankles, as is the opinion of the in the form of the dhahab, then that's also good action. Quick question here. Can somebody perform masah upon a khuf that has holes in it? Well, the short answer, without going into too much depth, is yes. Okay, and ulama that speak about this, they say that they cannot imagine knowing the Sahaba and their life and what they lived through. Okay, and even for those who have traveled to Medina and seen the environment which they would live in and the floor they would walk on, it's almost impossible to imagine that there wasn't a Sahabi that didn't have holes with socks in them. And had this mas'ala been something that would invalidate the eligibility to wipe over the socks, we would have definitely have some evidence to say so. Okay? So any holes inside the socks have no issue, inshallah. There's no problem if there's some holes inside the socks. If half the sock is ripped off the foot, that's another story. But the holes in the sock, inshallah, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, now the next mas'ala here is the thickness of the khuf. So traditionally, the khuf, what does the khuf refer to? Traditionally, al-khuf, when it's mentioned in Arabic, al-khuf, what is it talking about? What is the khuf talking about? It could be, some people say that, or they say it's like a leather sock which is resemblant kind of a shoe. Classically, like a leather sock, it's a leather, it's very strong material. It's resemblant somewhat of a shoe. So they say leather sock is what the khuf is. So there's big khilaf between the scholars on what the thickness must be in order for somebody to wipe over. So some of the ulama, they say they must be thick enough to walk continuously in. Okay, otherwise they cannot be wiped upon. Okay, they say that and another opinion is that it's permissible to wipe over thin socks even if they're like almost see-through socks. And what's applicable, it comes especially in handy for the sisters. Sometimes there's like a very commonly worn sock. It's like nylon material. It's almost see-through, but very, very thin, and it's worn by many females. Like footwear like this, according to the second opinion, that even if it's thin, there's no issue, it may be wiped over top of it. And in this opinion, the main evidence that's held is they say that the illah for wiping over the socks is for the sake of making it easier, okay? For making it easier to perform wudu. So therefore, regardless of the thickness of the socks, the reason for al-masih is there, which is to make wudu easier to perform, okay? So just because a khuf is thicker or thinner, it does not make it easier or more difficult to wipe over it in the wudu. Therefore, that does not affect the initial illah or the initial means which made it permissible to wipe over the sock or the khuf. And the general permissibility of masah al-khuffayn cannot be restricted except with a specific dalil. And what comes from the proof unrestrictedly must remain unrestricted and cannot be restricted except with a proof, okay? So stipulating thickness of khuf is restricting something in the ibadah of tahara, of al-wudu, masah al-khuffayn, which is left general. Okay, therefore it requires a specific proof, and in this regard it does not exist. Okay, similar to the how high or how much of the foot the khuf must cover. And with regard to that, there is some linguistic backing to it, as they say the khuf is something that initially linguistically that covers the ankles. However, the common denominator for both of these masail here is that we do not have the masah al-khuffayn is general mas'ala that's given to us, and we do not have this generalized hukum cannot be specified except with a specific dalil, and in these cases it does not exist. Okay? And this is the correct opinion, قول الراجح والله أعلم. We'll take another mas'ala just so we can maybe wrap up al-masah al-khuffayn inshallah in this jalsa here, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, and then we'll conclude. Is that another shart for the khuf to be wiped upon is that it must be able to be worn by itself without needing a wrapping or something outside of it to keep it on the foot. Which means that it must be something that's worn on the foot, that's fastened on the foot. Okay, in and of itself, when you wear it, it's fastened onto the foot. So in this mas'ala here, there is the first opinion that this footwear, it must be firm. So when I first started, I'm stating the hukum that we're taking. So the first opinion is that yes, it must be firm and stable on the foot in order for masah to be allowed. A khuf which keeps on falling off, or a footwear which keeps on falling off, or it has an external support, like you have to tie something around it onto your foot for it to be stable, they say it cannot be wiped over. This is held by the four madhahib, and they say that the need for wiping over the khuf arises from a khuf that's firmly wrapped around the foot, therefore it's difficult to remove it for wudu. However, a khuf that keeps on falling off the foot, there's no difficulty in removing it, therefore it doesn't need the rukhsa of wiping over it. You can just take it off very easily and wash. The second opinion is that it is not required, the khuf is not required to be self-stable. Okay? So it does not have to be something that it fits very firmly and stable to the foot in and of itself. It could be a footwear that is loose, or a footwear that has something fastening it to the foot. This opinion was held by some Malikis and some of the Shafi'is and Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah. Once again, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he allowed wiping over the khuf, and he did not restrict it to being self-stable or robust. Okay? Furthermore, a khuf which is loose and worn by a person with a large enough foot, it would become stable. Therefore, the issue is not with the khuf itself. Okay? So a person cannot be deprived of using this hukum, of masah over it. So, and likewise, so even in this mas'ala here, there is no evidence to restrict the khuf to having, in order for it to be self-secured to the foot or firmly stabilized onto the foot for it to be eligible for wiping over it. Okay, we don't have any dalil to specify that hukum. Therefore, inshallah, this last opinion that it does not need to be self-stable and fastened and secured. Even if you need something else to tie it to the foot, then it's permissible to wipe on. Wallahu a'lam. And just for summary, of course, that wiping over the khuf, even though it naturally, al-khuf refers to the leather sock, this hukum also is applicable to al-jawrabain or al-jawarib, socks, like cloth socks, as well as shoes as well, okay? Or sandals, or the like. So anything that's like a footwear, that it's considered a footwear, you put it on the foot, it's worn on the foot. You cannot like you put like a ribbon, you tie a ribbon around your foot and you say this is footwear, I'm going to wipe over it. This is nonsense. Yeah. Even there is some socks that is like, I don't know what they're called, but they barely cover the foot. Like they just go over the toes or the tips of the toes, and then it covers the bottom of the foot, and the entire top is exposed, and it covers just the bottom of the heel. Okay, it's like some new style fashion, a little bit strange, yani, but like even like this is not really even yani, considered as a khuf to begin with or something resemblant to a sock. It's just covering toes and the bottom of the foot. Okay, even if you were to wipe over them, there's nowhere to wipe. You'd be wiping your skin. Okay, so the mas'ala of al-khuf is also we use analysis or we make a qiyas from that to al-jawarib or shoes and the likes, to footwear that is worn onto the foot. Okay. Okay, so one of the last masail here, sorry, inshallah we'll film it, I promise we'll conclude shortly, inshallah. When making wudu, which part of the khuf is wiped over? Which part of the footwear is wiped over? Do you wipe over I kind of gave it away just a minute ago. You wipe over the top of it or the bottom? The top. And how much times do you wipe? 3? 1 time. So the masah of the khuf, you wipe over the top of the foot just once. Okay? Ali radiallahu anhu, there's a narration from Ali, he says that if the deen was based off of logic, then wiping would have been where? On the bottom. Because that's the part that touches the floor and is going to be more dirtier than the top. However, it is not based off of logic yet, it is a hukum shari'i from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to implement. So one wipe over the top of the foot. And are the khuf, when you wipe over them in the wudu, is it necessary to wipe them both at the same time? Or can you wipe the right one, then the left one, or the left one, then the right one? Nah? Either way. Either one. Okay? So, it's permissible to wipe over the right than the left, and that's the sunnah in wudu, to using always beginning with the right to the left. Or you can, if someone had to wipe with the left then the right, or if somebody wipes over both of them at the same time. No. Okay, just see if there's anything else, any other mas'al in this bab here. Very quickly, the khuf also, one of the shurut of the khuf being permissible to wipe on is the khuf in and of itself being made of a pure substance. It cannot be made of something that is najis, okay? Such as like the skin of a khinzir, okay? Also, if there's any najasa on the khuf as well, it must be clean. You cannot make salah in it. It would have to be cleaned. to wipe over it. So, some ulama, they say that if there is najasa on the khuf or on the footwear, you can make wudu still by wiping over top of it, even if there's najasa on it. However, without a doubt, it would have to be cleaned off before one could pray in it, because you cannot pray from the shurut of the salah, is you cannot pray with najasa on your body or on the makan of the salah. Okay, and I think this is it now. With this we will conclude. I apologize for the length of the dars, I'm going into depth and detail. However, Masah al-Khuffayn is a very important mas'ala, and I believe that it's very practical in our everyday life of every Muslim, especially for people that go to work and to school. Most of them, they're in a setting where they cannot really, or it's very difficult to wash their feet at school or at work. So this mas'ala of understanding the ahkam of wiping over the socks and wudu is something that's very practical and applicable to every Muslim on a daily basis. So for that reason, I wanted to expand and go into depth and detail, so we all have a khalfiyya or background knowledge pertaining to this. That's very important. Next week, inshallah, we will begin speaking about the next bab fi Tahara in this series here, which is Tahara al-Akbar, or the major purity, or al-Ghusl al-Shari. Okay? With this, I will conclude. جزاكم الله خيرا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.